There are stories that defy explanation. Cases that, despite decades of investigation and endless speculation, remain lodged in the public consciousness, their sharp edges refusing to be smoothed by the passage of time. They are modern folklore, cautionary tales whispered around campfires, their power lying not in what we know, but in what we can never be certain of. This is one such story. A mystery etched into the very fabric of a remote, unforgiving landscape. It begins in the winter of 1959, in the heart of the Soviet Union, with a group of 9 experienced hikers, their faces bright with the promise of adventure. They were students and graduates of the Ural Polytechnical Institute, led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov. This was not a casual outing. They were seasoned winter trekkers undertaking a Grade 3 expedition, the highest difficulty rating, with the goal of reaching a peak known as Otorten, a name which, in the local Mansi language, is sometimes translated as "don't go there." Their journey was meticulously documented. Recovered diaries and photographs paint a picture of camaraderie and competence. We see them smiling, building camps, and navigating the vast, snow-covered taiga. They were in their element, strong and well-prepared for the brutal conditions of the northern Urals. On January 28th, one member, Yuri Yudin, was forced to turn back due to illness. It was a decision that would save his life, but haunt him for the rest of it. The remaining 9 continued, pressing onward. Their last journal entry, dated February 1st, describes setting up a camp on the slopes of a mountain named Kolatsyakul, or Dead Mountain. They were behind schedule, hampered by worsening weather, but their tone was calm, determined. They were expected to send a telegram from their destination by February 12th. When the day came and went with no word, it was initially dismissed as a typical delay. But as days turned into a week, concern mounted. A search party was dispatched. What they would find on the slopes of Dead Mountain would become one of the most perplexing and terrifying unsolved cases of the 20th century. This mystery still hasn't been solved. On February 26th, the search team located the abandoned campsite. The scene was immediately, chillingly wrong. The tent was half buried in snow and badly damaged. But the most alarming detail was that it had been sliced open, not from the outside, as an animal or person might do, but deliberately from within. It was a clear act of desperation, a frantic escape. Inside, all the group's belongings, their warm clothing, their boots, their supplies, were left behind, neatly arranged. It was as if they had fled in an instant, with no time to prepare for the lethal cold. Outside the tent, investigators found a trail of footprints. They were made by 8 or 9 people, heading down the slope towards a dense forest nearly a mile away. Inexplicably, the footprints showed that the hikers were either barefoot, wearing only socks, or a single boot. In temperatures hovering around -30 degrees Celsius, this was a death sentence. There were no signs of a struggle, no indication of another party being present. Just the silent, orderly prints leading away from the relative safety of the tent and into the darkness. A group of hikers were found dead in the mountains, with no signs of struggle. The first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko, were discovered at the edge of the forest, beneath a large cedar tree. They were barefoot and dressed only in their underwear. The branches of the cedar tree above them were broken up to a height of 5 meters, suggesting someone had tried to climb it, perhaps to get a better view of the camp, or to escape something on the ground. The remains of a small fire lay nearby. 3 more bodies were found between the cedar tree and the tent, at intervals, suggesting they were trying to return to the camp. Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin. Their postures were that of people who had succumbed to hypothermia while fighting their way back up the slope. Slobodin had a minor skull fracture, but it wasn't considered fatal. At this point, the investigators assumed they were looking at a tragic, albeit bizarre, accident. The hikers had, for some unknown reason, panicked, fled their tent, and frozen to death. But the search wasn't over. It would take another 2 months for the snow to melt enough to reveal the final, most disturbing part of the puzzle. The remaining 4 hikers were found in a ravine, 75 meters deeper into the woods, buried under 4 meters of snow. And their injuries were horrific. Nicolas Thibault-Brignol had suffered a major skull fracture. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had catastrophic chest fractures with multiple broken ribs, and the doctor who performed the autopsy stated that the force required to cause such damage was equivalent to being hit by a car. They were internal injuries. There were almost no external wounds, no soft tissue damage, which made them even stranger. Furthermore, Dubinina was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips, while Zolotaryov was missing his eyeballs. The official explanation for these soft tissue injuries was putrefaction due to the bodies being in a stream of running water, but this has been heavily debated. The evidence became stranger still. Some of the hikers' clothing was found to contain significant levels of radioactive contamination. And then there was the clothing itself. Some of the last hikers found were wearing items belonging to those who had died first. Zolotaryov was found wearing Dubinina's coat and hat, while she had a piece of Krivonishenko's wool trousers wrapped around her foot. It was a desperate attempt to stave off the cold, a silent testament to their final, agonizing hours. Their tent was ripped open from the inside, and some were found miles away, barefoot. The official investigation in 1959 concluded that the hikers had died as a result of a compelling natural force. The case was closed, the files classified, leaving the families with no real answers. The ambiguity of the verdict only fueled speculation, giving rise to a host of theories, each attempting to make sense of the impossible. So what could have driven 9 experienced hikers to their deaths? The most widely accepted scientific theory is a rare type of slab avalanche. The idea is that the hikers, by cutting into the slope to pitch their tent, destabilized the snowpack above them. Hours later, a slab of snow could have slid down, not burying the tent, but covering it with a heavy weight, causing panic and some of the initial injuries, like Slobodin's fractured skull. This would explain the need to cut their way out and flee. However, critics point out that the slope was not particularly steep, and investigators at the time found no evidence of an avalanche. Another natural phenomenon proposed is katabatic wind, a powerful, dense flow of cold air that can rush down a mountainside at hurricane speeds. Such a wind could have made the tent untenable and rapidly dropped the effective temperature, forcing a retreat. A more exotic theory involves infrasound. It's hypothesized that a specific wind condition around the mountain could have created low-frequency sound waves below the range of human hearing, which can induce feelings of intense panic, dread, and nausea, causing the hikers to flee their tent in an irrational terror. Then there are the theories involving human intervention. Given the Cold War context and the classified nature of the case, many believe the hikers stumbled upon a secret military test. The radioactive traces on the clothing and reports from other groups in the area of strange orange spheres in the sky that night lend credence to this idea. Could the devastating internal injuries have been caused by the concussive blast of a weapon? Or were the hikers silenced after witnessing something they shouldn't have? This theory, however, fails to explain why they would be allowed to flee and slowly freeze to death, rather than being eliminated on sight. Finally, we must consider the psychological and physiological elements. Paradoxical undressing is a known phenomenon in severe hypothermia, where victims, in a state of confusion, feel intensely hot and remove their clothes. This could explain why the first bodies found were so sparsely dressed, but it doesn't explain the initial flight from the tent, nor the catastrophic internal injuries of the last 4. Each theory explains a piece of the puzzle, but no single theory adequately explains all of them. An avalanche doesn't account for the lack of external trauma on the last bodies. A military test doesn't explain the orderly retreat from the tent. Infrasound doesn't explain the radiation. To this day, no one knows what really happened. The case was officially reopened in 2019, and the new conclusion pointed again to an avalanche, combined with poor visibility, as the cause. But for many, this answer feels too simple, too neat to contain the jagged, terrifying facts of the case. The questions remain. What force possessed the power to inflict such specific, brutal injuries? What terror could drive seasoned experts into a frozen wasteland without their boots? The slopes of Dead Mountain keep their secrets. The story endures, a chilling reminder that there are places in the world and in human experience where the answers may forever lie just beyond our reach.